What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel for another conversation. And I think, as I always say, I think we're going to enjoy this one. This is a good one. This is a question that I get quite often, and I got it again yesterday in our Discord. And I was so impressed with my answer. I hate to kind of pat myself on the back, but I was so impressed with my answer that I decided that I wanted to have a conversation with this. And the reason I was impressed with my answer is because this was the first time that I'd kind of laid it out, and just kind of, really, I had a word for it, and I think that's what it was. This was the first time that I actually had a word to describe what I am as it pertains to this subject. What subject, you may ask? The existence of Jesus. So today, that's what we're going to be discussing. Did Jesus of Nazareth really exist? All right, so before we jump into this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community, channel, or content in any way that makes sense to you. And last but not least, check out our books and our merch. And speaking of books, I just finished my latest book entitled Black Nonbeliever Next Door, and it's actually available for pre-release now. I'm going to make some time either this weekend or the beginning of next week to share with you a little bit more about what's happening in that book. And I hope you're going to be excited about it, because I am. All right, so are y'all ready to jump into this conversation? Because again, I think this was going to be a good one. All right, so the historical existence of Jesus of Nazareth is a subject of ongoing debate among scholars, historians, and skeptics alike. The discourse primarily revolves around three perspectives. Well, actually, it's two perspectives. This third one is one that I'm going to introduce you to today. It is where I stand. So we'll start with the top two. Most of you are already familiar with the historicist view, which asserts that Jesus was a real figure, real historical figure, and the mythicist view, which argues that Jesus did not exist historically and is a mythological construct. Now, I've known that both of these views have existed for much of my entire life within Christianity, because even within Christianity, there are people who do not hold that Jesus was a historical character. There are several fringes of Christianity that view Jesus as a mythological character who exists as a sort of Christ consciousness, if you will. Yeah, there's a lot of that out there. Now, so our analysis today is we're going to kind of highlight the strengths and weaknesses of both the historicist and the mythicist positions, and then I'll share with you where I kind of stand with it and why. Now, even though I've known about these positions, again, for the majority of my life, they didn't really come into any type of usage or me hearing about them more until, of course, after I deconverted. And even then, it was several years. It was actually Myth Vision, Derek Lambert, who helped to popularize these conversations for me, because he's had a lot of them on his channel. I don't know if he's been having if he's been having them lately, but I know for a while he was having a lot of these conversations on his channel, and I was fascinated at how deeply attached people were to the idea of whether Jesus is mythological or historical. Fascinated, and you'll find out more about my fascination, but let's jump into the historicist view. So the historicist position holds that Jesus was a real person who lived in the first century common era, while acknowledging that supernatural claims about Jesus, miracles and resurrections, etc., are matters of faith. Historicists argue that there is sufficient historical evidence to support his existence as a human being. And I'm like, just the fact that's worded while acknowledging that supernatural claims are matters of faith automatically makes me suspicious of the scholastic nature of the person who would make this argument. Now, if it would have been while acknowledging that supernatural claims about Jesus are implausible, historicists argue that there is sufficient historical evidence to support his existence, I'd be less suspect. I'd be less suspicious. But the fact that we say that supernatural claims are a matter of faith, that does make me think that this person or that the people who kind of hold this view are still kind of catering to believers. And I'll jump into that a little later. Okay. So some key points about historicists is that they believe that there is sufficient historical data, such as writings from early Christian authors, references by non-Christian historians like Josephus and Tacitus, and the general historical context to conclude that Jesus existed as a historical person. Now, I just want to highlight this because literally every argument I hear from historicists does sound like that. They say, "Oh, well, there's so many non-Christian writers, non-Christian historians who referred to Jesus that makes it undoubtable." And then you say, "Okay, tell me who they were," and they're always just going to say Josephus and Tacitus. And it's like that's not a whole lot of people. That's just two. That's just two, and we're going to talk through those two. Okay. But and while they accept Jesus' existence, they do often critically examine the biblical text, separating historical facts from theological or supernatural claims. But here's my big point. Looking in the Bible for historical facts is like the stupidest shit ever. Like we're not looking in Romeo and Juliet for historical facts. So like, if that's where you're getting your historicism from, I think you're already starting in the wrong place. But, that's just me. Obviously, I think y'all know I'm not a historicist. I think you can kind of tell. But I'm also not a mythicist, but we'll see. All right, so historicists point to references in early non-Christian sources, such as Jewish historian Flavius Josephus and Roman historian Tacitus, which mention Jesus. That's it. Just mention the name Jesus. Okay? All right. We're going to talk about why that's important. Okay, so Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews contains passages that refer to a person named Jesus, his brother James, and his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. But here's the problem with this. There are no surviving manuscripts of Josephus' work before the 11th century. The oldest surviving manuscripts are Greek minusculus, which were copied by Christian monks. And Jews did not preserve Josephus' writings because they considered him a traitor, which caused them to question the unbiased argument that people often use to support Josephus as a source. Also, it's important to note that Josephus was born 37 Common Era, which would be 47 years after Jesus was allegedly crucified, which eliminates him as any type of credible source for asserting contemporary historicity. That elevated quickly. But then there's Tacitus, who in the Annals, he mentions Jesus, or possibly Jesus, because that's not accurate. Tacitus doesn't mention a Jesus, he mentions a Christus, and also mentions a Chrestus, and his execution by Pontius Pilate. The Annals survive in only two primary manuscripts dating from the 11th and 12th centuries. I wonder, is that a coincidence that the two manuscripts that are always cited to prove the historicity of Jesus just so happen to come out of the same century? Just saying. The preservation of ancient texts was often carried out by monastic scribes during the Middle Ages, which some suggest that Christian copyists might have inserted or modified passages to bolster the historical evidence for Jesus. And with everything that we know, even about the canonization of Scripture, how could we just say, "Oh no, well that didn't happen"? Like, come on, man, it happened with the whole book. Why would it not happen with the main character? It happens with all the other characters. Why wouldn't it happen with the main character? I mean, that's just me. Tacitus used Christus instead of Jesus, Skeptics argue that a Roman historian would more likely refer to an individual by their personal name rather than a rejected religious title, especially if he has disdain for that sect. You know, early Christian apologists like Justin Martyr, Tertullian, Clement of Alexandria, and Origen do not reference Tacitus's account when arguing for the legitimacy of Christianity, even though they cite other pagan sources. So, literally, the early fathers of Christianity who would have had firsthand knowledge, not firsthand knowledge, but firsthand knowledge of information that would help to legitimize their claims that this religion is foundational and that Jesus did exist, they felt no need to pull on Tacitus. I wonder, why is that? Is it because his works didn't exist yet? Going back down. And then Tacitus refers to Pilate as procurator rather than prefect, which is the title confirmed by archaeological evidence, the Pilate stone. And that's a major snafu for a historian, you know. But then they don't just depend on Josephus and Tacitus, which to me that's never been convincing. Even when I was a pastor, that was not convincing. I'd still likely probably still be a pastor. The letters of Paul, written within a few decades of Jesus' supposed lifetime, reference Jesus and early Christian communities. Well, I mean, this one is easy because it's in the story. Like, I don't know why anybody would use Paul, Peter, John, or anybody in the book. Why would you use anybody in the book? But out of everybody to use in the book, why the fuck would you use Paul? Paul never met Jesus according to Christian narratives. So out of all the apostles to be calling on, this one is not the one to call on for proof of historicity. That is just wildly absurd to me. No, the one apostle who never met him is evidence that he existed. What? Are you kidding me? Have you lost your donkey ass mind? Stop that shit, man. No. Okay. All right. So we'll move on from that one. And then the majority of historians and biblical scholars, regardless of religious affiliation, accept the historicity of Jesus based on available evidence. Bart Ehrman is a leading figure among these scholars. Despite being an agnostic atheist, he argues strongly for the historical evidence of Jesus while critically examining the New Testament text. Ehrman is classified as a historicity proponent who separates historical facts from theological claims, maintaining that Jesus' existence is a historical question rather than a religious one. Now, I do agree with Bart that it is a historical question. I don't agree with Bart that it is a historical fact. See that? And that's actually something that was one of the odd things about Bart to me, because he used to get really upset when people didn't believe in Jesus, and that was just like, that's odd. That's a very interesting red flag there, sir. But hey, that's it might be some professional thing, but like, I don't think so. That's not how that works. That seems to be a personal investment, which makes sense when this is your career. And also, you don't want to feel too foolish. I went through that. You deconvert and you're like, holy crap, I believed all of this shit and none of it was real. You want to believe that some of it was still true. This is why so many people who, when they deconvert, they still hold on to some essence of God, because you don't want to believe that you were that big of a dumbass. But it's okay. You were. Such were we all. We were all that big of a dumbass. So I'm not going to. One of the things I stopped doing when I stopped being, religiously superstitious, is I stopped feeling the need to put the cart before the horse. So I don't have the need to believe that Jesus physically existed if I have no evidence that ever introduced that to me. And so, like, here's the thing. 99.9% of the people on this planet have never been introduced to any evidence that this person is a historical fact. So for a historicist such as Dr. Bart to get upset that other people have not encountered the evidence is a major red flag. because the only intelligent way to perceive that is to understand that nobody should attach themselves to any belief that they don't have evidence for. And only a small fraction of a fraction of a fraction of scholars or people are actually interested in this bullshit, which means that, again, 99.999% of people are not interested in this. Therefore, they're not doing the research. Therefore, they've not been introduced to the evidence that you claim exists. So either way, at the end of the day, your argument is going to be, take my word for it because I know what I'm talking about. And that is fallacious. Yep, that's just... Now, I love Bart Ehrman. Please don't get me wrong. But that was a red flag for me. Everything else I love. His issues with the fact that other people don't believe that Jesus was a historical person, that's odd for me. That's an anomaly. Like that's like if someone came to me and said, Darante, I don't believe your grandmother is a historical person. Like, that would not make me mad. You're like, why would I be invested in your non-belief about something that's irrelevant to you and irrelevant to me? Like, get out of here, man. All right, so that's just me. But to just kind of bring it back, the point here is that there's consensus among scholars, right? But this fails because the majority of people, regardless of religious affiliation, also accept the existence of a God. That affirms or confirms nothing. We'll call this the consensus fallacy, you know? And so what I just kind of gave you are kind of the main arguments from the historicist view. And while I'm not saying that the historicists are wrong, I'm saying they need to pick some different arguments because those are too easy to pick through. And so the biggest weaknesses of them, which I've just kind of pointed out, is that critics argue that the historical references are limited, secondhand, or subject to interpolation. And let's just be clear, all of the historical references are limited, all of them are secondhand, and all of them are subject to interpolation. You know? And there's even been disputed authenticity of several of these passages of Josephus. And we're just going to pretend, well, no, these are disputed, but the ones that he said about Jesus, they're real. Come on now. But then lack of contemporary evidence, that's my biggie. There are no surviving contemporary records of Jesus's life. All accounts were written decades later. Like, that's a big ass red flag. And much of the evidence for the historicists comes from the New Testament. I'm not trusting the New Testament on shit. You know, there's so much it already gets wrong, which Bart Ehrman does a great job of highlighting that it gets wrong. And so how could I trust it as a credible source of information? And then, of course, early historians may have been influenced by Christian sources or societal pressures, and that's a real thing. But that's enough of the historicist view. Let's take a look at the mythicist view. The mythicist position contends that Jesus did not exist as a historical figure, but is instead a mythological or a fictional character created by early Christians, drawing on existing myths and religious ideas. Now, mythicists highlight similarities between the story of Jesus and pre-existing myths, dying and rising gods and pagan religions. Primarily, I know one that gets a lot of play is Mithra. Another one is Dionysus. That one I got introduced to in Drama 101, you know, Dionysus and the Dithyrambs. But then they also emphasize that no contemporary records or archaeological evidence confirm Jesus' existence. They argue that references to Jesus in historical texts may have been later additions by Christian scribes, and they challenge the reliability of the New Testament accounts due to contradictions in theological agendas. For the most part, like, I align with their critiques of the historicist view, right? I don't attach myself to the mythicist view in the same way that I don't attach myself to the historicist view. But like I if I had to pick one of these, I'd be more inclined to pick mythicist, but you'll find out why in a few. Mythicists may discount or dismiss evidence that contradicts their position, such as early references by historians. But as we see, the early references by historians are limited and easily dismissible, nor do they provide enough detail to provide a positive verification of identity. To believe that there would have been only one person with the name and ethnographic and socio-political profile of the character is a gross misunderstanding of reality. The mythicist view is held by a small number of scholars, and many arguments have been critiqued by experts in the field. But of course, the number of people who hold a view is irrelevant to the veracity of the view. And some people say that the mythicist view may overlook the possibility that mythological elements were added to a historical figure's life story over time. But you'd have to start with the undisputed evidence that the person in question was a historical figure first before this could actually be claimed. And of course, that is what's in question. Of course, Bart Ehrman says it himself. It is a historical question, not a historical fact. And of course, they've been accused of not adhering to standard historical methods, such as the criterion of multiple attestation and the principle of embarrassment. But as we've seen with the the multiple attestations are questionable, and there are no historical methods for proving non-existence. So this also fails, which is really my biggest concern with the historicist view, is that it sounds way too much like the theist view, that you can't disprove my God, so my God exists. Yep. And you just won't look at my evidence. You got to open up your mind and open up your heart. And it's just like, no, I don't think I have to do any of that, No. So, but I am not a mythicist for the same reasons that I'm not a historicist, So what am I? I'm an apathist. Okay. The apathist view posits the question of Jesus' historical existence is irrelevant or unimportant to one's perspective, especially if none of the supernatural claims attributed to him are credible or verifiable. This position focuses on the practical implications or lack thereof. Jesus' existence in the absence of evidence for his divinity or miraculous works just means nothing to me. I was asked this question in Discord yesterday, or it was actually asked about me, and I just so happened to be in Discord. So I decided to respond, and this was my response verbatim, and this is what inspired this video. I am technically a Jesus apathist because I reject the claims of miracles, divinity, resurrection, and eternal life. Whether a failed prophet named Jesus actually existed has become of no interest to me whatsoever. Considering the name that we transliterate Jesus from was common for that area and time period, the possibility of a guy who was a carpenter's son, who was named Jesus, who preached some stuff 2,000 years ago, is just as likely as the possibility of a guy who was a mechanic's son, who was named Mike, who preached some stuff in the past 10 years. And I know like 4 of them right off bat. Unless I'm willing to believe in the God that the character represents, the character's existence is of no interest to me. I'd first have to be convinced that God existed before I gained any interest in looking for his long lost son. And this is what I mean this is what I meant when I said earlier, I'm not interested in putting the cart before the horse again. Why, if the look, if God doesn't exist, why is this important? That's literally where it goes for me. And that this is why I don't identify as a mythicist either. Because like, oh no, he was entirely mythological. Like at the end of the day, you still have to go off of no evidence to get there. And that's just, why would you do that? I mean, it's just it's unnecessary. That's me. Now, when I say why would you do that, I am being facetious. You would do that because you're you and you have your reasons for doing that. I will not. If I don't have a reason to attach myself to an outcome, I shall not. If I do not have the evidence to attach myself to an outcome, I shall not. Regardless of how many people hold that view, regardless of how many people say that that's the best view, I can't be bullied like that, you know? And so when I look at it, what's clear to me is that it doesn't matter. if he was real or not. He's irrelevant. If someone makes up stories about a person, it doesn't make that person historically relevant. It only makes those stories relevant and the people who made up the stories. The need for extreme exaggeration speaks to the extreme irrelevance of the person. It reminds me of an episode of Family Guy that they did years ago, where they tell this little joke and then they do this cutscene to where Jesus is performing miracles, and someone is saying that his miracles have been overly exaggerated because the miracles is him doing like da 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 da, stuff like that, and it's just like, yeah, if that's the case, then because I mean that's the in a natural world, we know there is no resurrection. If there is no resurrection, there is no relevance. Mm, that's like a Johnny Cochran right there. If there is no relevance, nope, said it wrong. If there is no resurrection, there is no relevance. If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. It's a solid Cochran. That's a solid Cochran. But no, but I stand on that. I stand on that. If there is no resurrection, there is no relevance. This is I think this is what the Jewish community has been trying to tell us for centuries. Like, this man ain't relevant. No, let me stop. But yeah, so now the strengths of the apathist view is that number one, prioritize verifiable evidence over historical speculation, which aligns with an empirical and skeptical approaches. Recognize that given the lack of definitive evidence, the question may be unresolvable and not worth investing significant effort. Let's not spend any tax money on this, okay? This is, let's not do this. If Christians couldn't do a good enough job preserving the history of the person that they say was the most important in the world, why should we? Hello. Like, the Catholic Church has been claiming for like centuries to have all the evidence we need. Just go get it from the Pope. Apparently, he got the body of Jesus somewhere. He got the body of all the apostles. You know. So yeah. And then this view also highlights that without credible evidence for supernatural claims, the historical existence of Jesus has minimal impact on contemporary beliefs or practices. And this view also allows for acknowledgement of multiple possibilities, historical figure, myth, composite character, without feeling the need to commit to a definitive stance. It's unnecessary. For individuals who base their beliefs on empirical evidence and practical outcomes, the apathist view aligns with a secular humanist approach. By de-emphasizing the importance of Jesus' historicity, it may reduce contentious debates that often lead to polarization. Again, the fact that Bart gets upset that people don't believe that the Jesus guy existed is a red flag for me. And particularly because I don't like polarization, especially over stuff that doesn't matter. Like, there really shouldn't be a mythicist versus historicist debate. What is the outcome of this? And again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm telling you, this is where I kind of feel. Okay, all right, I'm about to piss somebody off. I didn't like hip hop debates. You know what I'm saying? No, I didn't like them. Never liked them. Didn't like hip hop rap offs or whatever. I call them hip hop debates. That's not what those are. But no, I didn't like them. Now, I can see utility in those, because the utility in those is you're crafting your skills, crafting your artistic skills. I see no utility in the mythicist versus historicist debate. Regardless of who wins, it won't mean shit. If the historicists win, Jesus still ain't coming back. And if the mythologists win, Jesus still ain't coming back. And the only reason this dude's story is important is because people think he's coming back. So I think now that we know that this dude, we don't know if he was here, we don't know if he was real, but we do know this motherfucker is not coming back. So I don't even know why he's still relevant. It's just me. It's just me. Um, so yeah, but and that's really the biggest thing. The apathist view encourages attention to current social, ethical, and existential matters rather than irrelevant historical uncertainties. Which to me is just like, I think I do. Okay, I'm probably getting in a little trouble for this. I do feel like much of the secular community is making the same mistake as the antiquated church community, and that is just doing shit that doesn't matter. Like that's what killed the traditional church. This is where you get all the mega churches and the hip hop churches and the indie pop churches from. You get those because the majority of those people who lead those churches grew up in traditional churches where they got disillusioned and disappointed with the fact that these things were just becoming, like social clubs and gathering places and ways to preserve ritual. Like that's not what the Generation X and millennials and Z's wanted from their church. They wanted life. They wanted something that dealt with their life, which is what you look at a lot of those churches that are quote unquote thriving, because none of them are really thriving, but they're doing better than the traditional churches. The reason they're doing so is because they're preaching stuff like your best life now, enjoying everyday life. You got to get your life together. I'm getting my life back, because they're dealing with people where they are. And the secular community is standing on the outside, pointing at them, saying, look at them, look at them. And then we get together and just talk about bullshit, and just jacking each other off, making each other feel good, saying, "Oh, you're so smart." I know I'm smart. I don't I don't need you to tell me that. You know what I'm saying? Like I we need to be, if we are to be of any use in helping society become more progressive, we need to be more concerned with current social, ethical, and existential matters rather than irrelevant historical uncertainties. We need to get back in the trenches. We need to actually, like, it makes no sense that as many of the secular organizations that we have doing work, that the people within these organizations are still falling apart. We're not being attentive enough, you know? But don't worry, the pastor's here now. We're going to get this done. All right? That was fun. I felt like doing that. All right, so the debate over Jesus' historical existence encompasses complex arguments on all sides. The historicist view relies on historical references, not evidence. I love that, and scholarly consensus, not evidence, but faces challenges due to limited and potentially biased sources. The mythicist view raises important questions about the reliability of the evidence, but is often critiqued for methodological shortcomings and lack of scholarly support. Which again, scholarly support for non-existence. What the fuck is that? The apathist perspective offers a pragmatic approach, which, yes, I am a pragmatist, so much of what you get from me will be highly pragmatic. Because my question with anything is like, what's the utility of this? Like, I spent a major part of my time wasting my time. I don't want to do that anymore. But asserting that the question of Jesus' existence is of little consequence without verifiable evidence of his supernatural attributes. It emphasizes evidence based reasoning and focuses on issues that directly affect contemporary life. Ultimately, the choice between these views depends on individual priorities, interpretive frameworks, and the weight given to historical versus empirical evidence. The apathist view provides a relevant and reasonable stance for those who find the debate peripheral to their understanding of the world. For those of you who are like me and you don't really care, you now have a word for you. And this word, I didn't make it up. It exists before me, more aptly as apatheist. So we have atheist, um, anti-theist. Well, there are also apatheist, and likely most people, you probably run into quite a few people who are apatheist, which is they don't care if a God exists or not. It's just irrelevant to them. Um, and many, like, I think I'd likely be. I'm an atheist. I'm an apatheist atheist. Because I don't care. Like if they're like as an atheist, I don't believe in a God. I don't believe that there is a God. If there was a God, I would still not care. Like for God to just show up now after all of this time, it would have to be incredibly insignificant. You know what I'm saying? The fact that you were able to be invisible that whole time just lets me know how useless you are. So I wouldn't care. It's like you like, and I'm kind of like this with stuff. Like I have attachment issues. That's just me. But like if I go into my closet and I see a shirt in my closet that I forgot I had, I'm throwing it away. Like for the most part, like I'm just like, oh no, I don't need this because you've been here this whole time, and I completely forgot that you were here. So that means you have no utility here. Your time is done. So if a God just popped up, I'd just be like, nope, I don't care. I'm not interested. Hey, God's here. Whatever. That's pretty much how I'd be. But so an apathist is just a play on that apatheist as when it comes to the existence of Jesus. I am apathetic to the existence of Jesus. Period. Why would I care? What good, now that we know that there is no God, therefore there is no Son of God, therefore there is no resurrection, why would I care that a guy named Jesus preached some stuff and got killed for it? I have plenty of people like that in my own history. I have an MLK. I have a Martin X. I have a Martin X. I have a Malcolm X. I have a Marcus Garvey who was exiled. I have plenty of people in my own history who preached some stuff and got killed for it, who actually did stuff themselves that was historically relevant. Jesus himself, according to the story, did nothing that was historically relevant. Everything that has happened that has made Jesus relevant, none of it happened because of him. He did none of it. So I'd be more interested in the historicity of the people who actually created the religion, not the mythological figurehead. And this is what kind of does tick me off about the historicist view. Whether you believe that there was a historical Jesus does not discount the fact that the character in the Bible is mythological. The moment he does something supernatural and people believe that his supernaturalism is what makes him relevant, he is a mythological character. Whether he is based on a historical character or not is another question, but the person in the book is a mythological character. I hope that makes sense. Thank y'all for hanging out with me today, man. I did enjoy this one. I hope y'all enjoyed it too. Knocked this one out in a little bit over 30 minutes. But I ain't mad at it. Listen, I'd love to hear your thoughts and thoughts and stuff in the comments. Please share them below. And of course, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community, channel, or content in any way that makes sense for you. And check out our books on Amazon and check out our merch because we have some of the dopest stuff. And my newest book is available for pre-release now, Black Nonbeliever Next Door. Go ahead and get ready. All right, I love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holler at you later.
I was living my life in the servitude of misunderstandings of people I loved. Giving it all, it was never enough. Because of the fall, I could never get up. I moved on from their misunderstandings. I am no longer standing.